have to respond to this is twofold. The first is by theoretically increasing face time with policy principles as a way to somehow counteract the problem of greater budgets. That doesn't really work terribly well. The more serious problem is the securitization of everything, is the notion that the only way you will be able to get dollars or resources or staff to do what you want is to somehow link it to the national security of the United States. And the problem is that there are certain things that might, be in the long-term interest of the United States, but are very attenuated in terms of national security interests. And we're seeing this in areas way beyond what the Defense Department has to do. As a political scientist, for example, the National Science Foundation just zeroed out our budget for NSF funding. There is an exception, however. If we can somehow show that our political science research is connected to national security, then we can potentially get funding, which is great. Let me tell you, my fellow political scientists, we're going to be very creative in terms of how we define what's in the national security of the United States. But the problem is, over the long term, this leads to certain habits of thought where you, again, try to securitize everything in order to get it to the front of the foreign policy queue. And I don't think that's terribly healthy. So basically, to conclude quickly, unless we get our balance of foreign policy spending in order and staffing and prioritization, I think we're in trouble both financially and strategically. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Drezner. And now we turn to Nate Fryer. Give it your best shot. Some would call him Think Fryer.
Thank you.
And you have the floor.
All right, thanks. Actually, the first thing I was going to start out with, and I anticipated this, obviously, when I was asked to do this a couple of days ago, is that Dan and I actually have probably a lot more in common than we have apart in the way we think about this problem. I think there are some issues, though, that bear pointing out, and I think I'm going to do that and hope to sort of spark some thought as I do. I mean, one thing, with all due respect to Dan, I mean, I think, frankly, right now, inside Washington, and specifically in the Pentagon, the concept of realism might, in and of itself, be part of the problem with respect to the way we view our challenges. In fact, the over-militarization, which is the point of this discussion, frankly, leads us to militarize every security problem as well. A perfect example of that would be, for example, in the aftermath of 9/11, basically turning what is fundamentally a very complex non-state problem automatically into a state problem. We're going to make it into an Iraq problem, for example. I do think that there's some of that going on. Let me just answer the question outright that was put to me. Is U.S. foreign policy excessively militarized, overly militarized? Absolutely.